Today we're going to learn adding mixed numbers. We already know these steps as the same 4 steps as adding and subtracting fractions. Number 1, find a common denominator. Number 2, make equivalent fractions. Number 3, solve. Number 4, simplify or rename or regroup.
Let's say we have 7 and 3/10, and we would like to add that to 2 and 1/10. First thing we need is like denominators, and if you look here, we have a 10 as a denominator and a 10 as a denominator. So the hard part is actually done for us. We already have a common denominator. So therefore, we start with our fractions, and we do 3/10 plus 1/10 gives us 4/10. And then we do our whole numbers. 7 plus 2 is 9. So the sum to 7 and 3/10 plus 2 and 1/10 is 9 and 4/10. Now if you notice here, we have 4 and we have 10, and they can be simplified because they're both even. So we're going to take and divide by 2 because they're both even. Now remember, if we divide by 2 over 2, that's dividing by 1, it does not change the value. So 4 divided by 2 gives us a new numerator of 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives us a new denominator of 5. So therefore, the sum of 7 and 3/10 plus 2 and 1/10 is 9 and 2/5. Final sum.
Let's try 3 and 1/6 plus 2 and 5/6.
First thing we need is a common denominator. If you look, we have a 6 and a 6. So the hard part is already done for us. We have a common denominator. So we're just going to add 3 and 1/6 plus 2 and 5/6. So 1/6 plus 5/6 is 6/6. Then we go to our whole numbers. 3 plus 2 is 5. So we have 5 and 6/6. Now you must remember from all of our other lessons that 6 over 6 is equivalent to 1 whole. So 5 and 6/6 is actually equivalent to 6 wholes. Done.
Let's try 5 and 4/5 plus 2 and 2/5.
All right, first thing we need is a common denominator. So if we look here, we have a 5 and we have a 5. Step 1 is done. So we don't have to worry about equivalent fractions. We're going to go straight to solving. We're going to start with our fractions. 4/5 plus 2/5 will be 6/5. Then we do our whole numbers. 5 plus 2 is 7. Now if you look at our fraction here this time, we're not going to simplify. We're actually going to rename because 6/5 is an improper fraction. So remember, 5/5 is 1 whole, so we can take out 1 whole and then we would have 1 left over. So just to refresh your memories, we're actually going to do our division. So 6/5, we need to divide that. So remember that we have our cowboy on top, and then our horse is going to be on bottom. So if we set up our house, our cowboy has to go inside. The horse stays outside so he doesn't eat all of our food. 5 goes into 6 1 whole time. 1 times 5 is 5. Subtract, we get a difference of 1, and we write that as 1 over 5. So 6/5 is actually equivalent to this 1 over 5. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this 1 whole that we got with doing our 6/5, this 1 whole here, and it's going to be added to our 7 over here. So then our whole number actually becomes 8. And then if you look, we had our 1/5 left over from 6/5. So this 1/5 carries down here. So this actually then will become 8 and 1/5. So our final sum of 5 and 4/5 plus 2 and 2/5 will be 8 and 1/5. We're now going to try one that does not have a common denominator. So we're going to try 2 and 1/2. We're going to add that to 2 and 1/6. So if we look at these two denominators, we have a 2 here and we have a 6. So what we want to do is see if we can use one that's already there. So we pick the biggest and we realize that, hey, 2 goes into 6, so 2 is a factor of 6, or 6 is a multiple of 2. So we're going to go ahead and use 6 as our least common denominator. So we're going to say that our LCD, our least common denominator, is 6. And then this is what we're going to use for every denominator. So then this fraction, 2 1/2, needs to become something with 2 and something over 6. So step 1 is done. Now step 2 is make an equivalent fraction. So what we do to the denominators, we have to do to the numerator. So we think, how did I go from my old denominator of 2 to my new denominator of 6? Well, that's times 3. So we take our denominator times 3. What we do to our denominator, we have to do to our numerator. So we do 1 times 3, which is going to give us 3. So our equivalent fraction to 2.5 is 2 3/6. Now, since we have like denominators, just like with regular fractions, we can go ahead and just add them up. So we have our 3/6 plus 1/6, which gives us 4/6. And then our whole numbers are 2 plus 2, which is 4. So 4 and 4/6 is our sum. However, if we look at our 4/6, our fraction, we can see that they're both even, so they need simplified. We're going to go ahead and divide them both by 2, since they are both even. And then we get 2/3. So our simplified fraction is 2/3. So our final solution, we can't forget our whole number, will be 4 and 2/3, our final sum.
Our last problem is
2 and 1/4 plus 2 and 4/5. First step we need is the common denominator. So if I look, I have a 4 as a denominator and a 5. Doesn't work. So we pick our biggest, 5. Does 4 go into 5? No, it does not. Therefore, we need to list the multiples, or we can multiply the denominators together. If we did that, we would do 4 times 5, we would get 20. If we listed the multiples, we actually would get the same thing. So first we would list 5, 10, 15, and 20. 20 is a factor of both 4 and 5, so our LCD is going to be 20. So now we're going to make 2 equivalent fractions to something over 20. Remember, equivalent fraction means what we do to the denominator we have to do to the numerator. So if we start at the top, 4 times what gave us 20? Well, 5. So if we take our denominator times 5, we have to take our numerator times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. Go to our bottom one. Think, how do we go from 5 to 20? That's going to be times 4. So what we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. 4 times 4 is 16. So once we have our equivalent fractions, next we need to find the sum. So we solve. So 5/20 plus 16/20 will give us 21 over 20. Then we add up our whole numbers, which was 2 plus 2, which is 4. So 4 and 21/20. Hopefully you picked up that 21/20 is actually an improper fraction, so therefore this means we have greater than 1. If 20 is our denominator, to make that one whole would be 20 up here. So 20 out of 20 would be one whole. And if you notice, we would have one left over, so we would get 1 and 1/20. But we're going to go ahead and do our horse and cowboy just because. So we'll go ahead and do 20 into 21. That would go one time by subtracting it a difference of 1. 1 and 1 over 20. So now this whole number that's here is going to join our whole number here, that's 4. So this whole number is going to go together. So our 4 plus 1 equals 5. And then our 1/20 that was left over from our 21/20 is going to come down here. So we have 20. So our final sum is going to be 5 and 1/20.
That's the end for now. Ho, 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 ho.